Students, we were having an overview of the cognitive school of thought. In the previous videos, we learned about some fundamentals of the cognitive school of thought and then had a look on the premises of the school. Now, in this video, we will see some criticism and context and contributions of the cognitive school of thought. The composition of this video will be same as previous. We will have an overview, first of all, what are some positive and negative points of cognitive school, and then we will see some criticism and then context and contributions. So let's have an overview of the cognitive school. The central idea is valid. The first point which is telling us that the central idea, the validity of central idea, it means that actually the cognitive school of thought based upon the mental processes of an individual. And it heavily relies upon the cognitive psychology, and it tells us that there are certain kind of processes in the decision making that actually runs inside the mind of an individual. So basically this idea is valid, and this can be applicable in the strategy formulation as well. But and we can see the strategy formulation as a cognitive process. But we have to see that what are those processes that are actually involved in the strategy formulation, and we need to gain some sufficiency from cognitive psychology, and we have to see that apart from an individual, how the strategist in the organization use these cognitive processes for the strategy formulation purpose. So overall, this the central idea is good and it's valid, but we have to gain some sufficiency, and we have to see that what are those practices that are followed by the individuals in the organization to formulate a strategy. So for now, we will see some critical points that are discussed in the literature, and that are on the basis of these points, the cognitive school of thought is being criticized by different researchers and authors. So the first point is the cognitive bias versus ability to integrate. Basically, it is said that in the cognitive process, there are multiple kind of decision biases. For example, if a person has multiple information, that usually it distorts the decision-making process. It is widely discussed in the cognitive school and in the cognitive process and in the cognitive psychology. And this is valid and this is true for an individual. But sometimes it happens that if a person has a multiple kind of information, it's very good to integrate all of the information. So this point is basically missing in the cognitive school of thought, and it is widely criticized that this is not necessary, that if a person is having multiple kind of information, that information will distort all of the decision process. So this is very important to discuss here, that the cognitive bias is not always there. It is also possible that people may have some ability to integrate. So this is also a good discussion point, and this is discussed in the criticism and in the literature on the cognitive school, that we have to see that how people are able to integrate all of the information beside the cognitive bias and all of that information that can distort how it can be applicable or it can be helpful for an individual to take some decision. Second point is discussion on environment and cognitive conjunction. As we have seen in some previous videos and the cognitive school of thought, we saw that we usually say that all of the process is the mental process which is running inside in the mind of an individual, how that person takes decision, and that this school heavily relies upon the mental processes, and it usually ignores the environmental factors and external factors, external to organization and even internal to organization. It ignores all of that information which is necessary. So we have to see that what are the impacts of environment on the decision-making process of individuals inside the organization. The decision-making process and the strategy formulation process is a little bit different from the daily life cognitive psychology. So we also have to see that how the environment, internal organizational environment and external organizational environment can be seen in connection to this cognitive psychology concept of the strategy formulation when it is implemented on the strategy formulation process. Now, this was all about the criticism on the cognitive school of thought. Now we will have an overview on the context in which the cognitive school is applicable. There are two wings which we read in the previous videos. One is the objectivist wing and another is the subjectivist wing. The objectivist wing is of view that reality is out there and it is measurable. So if we have to for example, see, and for we have to take the objectivist wing in the cognitive school, then in the case where the decision is to be taken by a single individual, this context is applicable only in that situation where decision has to be taken by a single individual. When the reality is objective and it is based on the facts and figures. I can give you an example. For example, if organization has to make a strategy on the basis of the fact that all of their share prices, for example, are going down. So they have to take a decision on what kind of action to be taken. So this is based upon the objective reality, the fact. So in this case, the objectivist wing is active, and the cognitive school will be taking the objectivist wing where the reality is out there and that cannot be denied, and an individual has to take decision on the basis of the fact. But when we come to the subjectivist wing, this is about when the reality is subjective and people have to. There are multiple people and they have to define different kind of things for an organization, and on the basis of that thing they have to take decision. So for example, if a manager is sitting and asking different people what is the fashion sense of, for example, Pakistani people. So fashion sense can be different for every person inside the organization and for outside the organization, and it can be defined differently for every person. So there will be multiple kind of definitions, and on the basis of those definitions, this will be difficult for an individual to take a decision that will be on some facts and figures. So on the basis of these subjectivity, we will be having certain kind of consensus on the definition of fashion sense, and then they will be having strategy, they will be developing a strategy. So the subjectivist wing is applicable only where the information is subjective. So this is the context which I have defined for the cognitive school of thought, which is discussed in the literature. Now we will see at what are some contributions of the cognitive school of thought in the body of knowledge and body of scholarship of the strategic management. Now, the original conception of strategy, it provides us a very good baseline for the original conception of strategy, and this is usually possible in the objective wing, where the reality is there and only one person has to take decision. So while conceiving there is a reality, while conceiving the strategy, the original strategy for the first time, this provides us a very good baseline how the mental processes come in the reality for the original conception of strategy. While talking about the reconception of strategy, existing strategy, this also provides us, the subjective wing provides us a good baseline for that, where we have multiple strategies already there, and we have to change existing strategy on the basis of the environmental factors and multiple definitions that are available, or even the objectivist wing is also active here. So reconception of existing strategy and changing those strategy is also, it provides, the cognitive school provides us also a great guideline at how the mental processes are active while we reconceive the strategy. Now, the last point is the clinging with previous strategy. We will see in upcoming schools that how the people cling with the previous strategies, or how they resist to the change. But here, the cognitive school of thought also provides us a very good base, or very good literature on how the people and the individuals in the organization cling with the previous strategies on the basis of the mental processes they have, and how the decision biases come in serve as hurdle in the decision-making process. So these are the contribution, and it tells us the cognitive school provides us a good bulk of literature for this.